What's going on, you Manic Savages? Today we're going to be talking about a temperament known as Bi-Savagery. So, the medical community has decided to call this temperament bipolar, but it's actually a hybrid of two savages, Sad Savage, Manic Savage. And we're going to be talking about this today. And we're going to be talking about this in reference to what is called the Big Five, or the five-factor analysis. It's a personality. It's actually a personality, you know. They call this thing a fucking mood disorder. But they're only looking at half of the condition, if you want to call it that. They're only looking at part of the savage. They're not looking at the full fucking savage. And that's what we're going to do today. Address the full fucking savage. Both Sad Savage and Manic Savage. Alright? So let's just go fucking balls deep and let's get into it real quick, you guys. So, mania. This is Manic fucking Savage. This is the savage that feels like he can just take on the whole fucking world like a complete and utter savage. And before I really go balls deep, we're going to discuss, there's 5 temperaments that make up most of what your personality is. Openness, interest in ideas and creativity. Conscientiousness, which is known as orderliness and industriousness. And so, do you care about rules? Do you care about authority? Are you structured? Do you follow a plan and a schedule? Or are you impulsive? Or are you impulsive and make very quick decisions and don't think before you act, essentially, and don't give a damn about the rules or authority? Extroversion, enthusiasm, and assertiveness. That's what the Big Five is actually measuring, right? And it's also sociability, but it's positive emotion, essentially. Agreeableness. So that's politeness. So are you nice and sympathetic? It's not necessarily sympathetic, but it could be. I like to compare and contrast politeness from compassion. Polite is sympathetic. Compassion is empathetic, right? Those make up agreeableness. But politeness can be a lot more than just sympathy. You can be just, oh, that's really nice. It's a really nice shirt today. You know, that's fucking polite. Neuroticism, volatility. Do your fucking emotions. Are you fucking driving down the road? Your fucking girl's in the seat. You got the kids in the back. You know, you got the whole family. You've got like fucking 4 other lives that you could be risking right now. And then you see some fucking dude on the motorcycle. And then you almost run into them. And then you roll down your window and you're like, you're a fucking cunt. And then you almost kill your entire family. That you're a fucking neurotic cunt. You're volatile, right? So that's what that is. It's proneness to negative emotion, and which is associated with anxiety and like sadness and depression. So, to the degree that you experience, and the frequency to which you experience negative emotion, that's could be thought of as volatility. And then there's withdrawal tendencies. Do you have a lot of social anxiety and pull back? See, God, I know I'm giving a long. I know I'm defining these characteristics in detail, but I just need to. Withdrawal tendencies. Do you social anxiety, essentially? You don't want to fucking talk to anybody. It doesn't necessarily mean you're introverted, but you generally just don't fucking like people. You don't want to be around them, and you have negative emotion associated with the idea of actually talking to somebody. Yeah, you're fucking neurotic. You're not introverted. Anyways, let's fucking move on. So, what the fuck does this have to do with the Bi-Savagery? Well, Manic Savage is going to be discussed right fucking now. This is the symptoms of a Manic Savage. Feeling unusually high and optimistic or extremely irritable. Irritability is associated with volatility. Here's the thing. My experience, I'm fucking weird, you guys. Obviously, I'm super excited right now. I'm super enthusiastic. You know what I'm saying? I'm super, super excited about this video right now. But I took the Big Five like 3 months ago. Yeah, about 3 months ago. And I got fucking 0th percentile for enthusiasm. 89th percentile for neuroticism. 87th percentile for assertiveness. So I was like extroverted, but I was like extremely low in enthusiasm, extremely high in neuroticism. So I think you can be both neurotic and enthusiastic at the same time. So highly irritable. They call it like a euphoric rage, right? High levels of neuroticism, high levels of extroversion. But I do think that both, for me at least, it's been my experience that I have times where my neuroticism just plummets. So I become, my neuroticism plummets and my enthusiasm skyrockets. And I'm generally, look at my fucking, I'm low in orderliness, right? I'm fucking super low in orderliness. So That's pretty constant. So basically, I make impulsive decisions, and I take big risks, and I don't feel any negative emotion associated with those risks at the time. And so that looks like low levels of conscientiousness associated with orderliness and high levels of neuroticism, right? But then there's, of course, my extroversion. That goes up and down, like I said, right? The Manic Savage, feeling unusually high and optimistic, unrealistic, grandiose beliefs of oneself, and fucking absolutely feeling beautiful about one's abilities or powers. Come on now. Sleeping very little. I think there's a correlation. I think the idea of sleeping very little, people who experience manic savagery, what happens is they can work for sometimes 2 or 3 days. I fucking tell you what, guys. I work at a call center, right? I'm supposed to make 120 calls per day. Some days I struggle to make my 120 calls. Other days I will make 280 fucking calls. I'm not fucking kidding you guys. I'll do like 2.5 days worth of work in one fucking day, and I won't even be tired at the end of the day. And there will be days where I just won't fucking sleep and my thoughts will race. So what the fuck is, and speaking of racing thoughts, what's racing thoughts? Look at my fucking body. I'm going to show you something that's very interesting real quick. Look at my fucking body. You're like, what the fuck, bruh? You look like a fucking, you look like it's just so random almost, right? That's high levels of openness associated with creativity. I have a lot of creative ideas, and I love images, and I love visuals, you know? But it's also low levels of orderliness. And so that's what I've got with that. Gosh dang, motherfucker. But the most important thing, we're not talking about the low levels of conscientiousness associated with orderliness for tonight now. What we're focused on is talking so rapidly that others can't keep up, racing thoughts, jumping quickly from one idea to the next, highly distractible and unable to concentrate. I think that one's actually conscientiousness, but the first two, there's a correlation between those who have bipolar and those who have high levels of intelligence and creativity. I think this is actually, openness is not entirely correlated, but it is correlated with intelligence, IQ, right? And so I think there's, like I said, now we're getting into the personality aspects of it. It's much more than just being neurotic. Jumping from one idea to the next, to the next, to the next, that's creativity, that's openness. And so what you're actually diagnosing is somebody who's, well, perhaps extremely freaking enthusiastic, their mind's racing, but not only are they extremely enthusiastic, but they're naturally higher in openness anyways. And so they're very interested in ideas and creativity. So that's what that looks like. And low levels of conscientiousness. Conscientiousness, I do need to go back to that. Remember I said I do 280 calls per day. That's associated with industriousness. Sometimes I struggle to meet my quota. Other days I will blow it out of the water. Industriousness. I think mania, it seems that orderliness, which is like planning, and how, if do you plan your day out? Do you care about roles? Do you care about authority? Or do you care about structures and organization? But then the other end of it is industriousness. I think manic phases, the chemicals that go on in the brain whenever the manic savages come out, you know, the manic savage reveals itself, industriousness skyrockets. Orderliness stays the same, if not lower. Enthusiasm skyrockets. Openness, I would say that if you're an open person, it's probably going to be a constant. Agreeableness, I'm always disagreeable. I'm an artist, you know, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Agreeableness, I'm not going to talk about that right now. I don't know if as far as I can tell, I don't think that the Bi-Savage, I don't think agreeableness goes too much into that. So we're not going to worry about that personality trait in particular. But neuroticism. I think my neuroticism actually drops. Those who have lower levels of neuroticism are more likely to take risks. Manic savages take more risks, and they're extremely excited about those risks. And they don't plan anything out. That's 3, and they're highly interested in ideas and jump from one idea to the next. That's 4 personality domains. Highly distractible, low conscientiousness, impaired judgment, impulsiveness, low conscientiousness. Acting recklessly without thinking about the consequences, low conscientiousness. Delusions and hallucinations. I'm not going to go into that one because I'm not so sure about that one. And I don't know what they mean by hallucinations and delusions. That one needs to be specified, but I don't know about that one just yet. So that one I'm going to skip for now. Because I have heard people saying things about being delusional, about believing that they're sent here by God, but maybe they're just very enthusiastic. But I don't know what they mean by the delusion, so we're skipping that for right now. And then you say hallucinations. Are they just very open? I don't know. Open people see things in images, and so that's another video. That's another video. But then obviously there's the sad savage, you guys. This is the not so happy, not so manic savage. Feelings of hopelessness, sad or empty, irritability, inability to experience pleasure. So that's actually low levels of extroversion. Interesting that it says that. Inability to experience pleasure, fatigue or loss of energy. So that's actually low level. Like it's as if you've actually had a decline. It implies the fact that it says loss of energy and inability to experience pleasure implies that there once was an ability to have a lot of energy, and obviously it's manic savage. But what that indicates is that your extroversion actually drops and your neuroticism skyrockets back up. And with bipolar, maybe your neuroticism could stay the same, but it's also likely that it could potentially, neuroticism can drop and you can take more risks, and extroversion can climb up and become excited about everything. Appetite or weight changes, sleeping problems. So sleeping too much or too little. For me, I go through these phases, so I become sad savage sometimes. Sometimes I'm fucking manic savage. Sometimes I'm just sad savage. Concentration and memory problems. I think that could be low conscientious. I don't know about that one, actually. If I don't know some shit, I'm going to admit it. I think that's just associated with, if memory problems could potentially be just negative emotions kind of fogging up your brain, potentially. But I don't know about that one. That's depression. And depression is associated with concentration and memory problems if you're just too busy thinking about sad shit all the fucking time. Feelings of worthlessness or guilt, thoughts of suicide or death. That's all fucking neuroticism, and maybe it could imply that there was a drop in typical levels of extroversion or positive emotion. So that's what that looks like, you fucking guys. Now, there's a thing that I want to consider here. Those are 4 domains that are clearly represented in the bipolar mood disorder: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, and neuroticism. So I'm hard pressed to believe that this is actually a personality temperament. Doctors have a very difficult time actually understanding what this thing is. They've given it so many fucking names. They've given it so many names, and they have very, very little success in actually treating it. And I think the reason for that is because we have difficult time treating personality disorders, right? And these are personality differences. I don't know if it's a disorder yet. And here's a fucking thing. This is another. You can call me the shredded fucking philosopher because I'm going to make this point. We need to distinguish what is disorder and what is a difference, right? If you score 99th percentile for openness or score 99th percentile for conscientiousness associated with orderliness, so you're extremely, and that's another thing, orderliness is also associated with being neat and clean. If you're like 99th percentile for conscientiousness associated with orderliness, you might be diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And if you're like 0th percentile for agreeableness, you're bordering on antisocial personality disorder, especially if coupled with low conscientiousness. Extremely high levels of extroversion, that could be mania. And so what it actually seems like is what we're calling a disorder. To me, it looks like we've classified things as disorders whenever they fall outside the realm of predictability and averages. So this is what this actually is. If you take the Factor 5 analysis, and I'm going to include a fucking link below, take that fucking test, you cunts, and let me know what you score. I'm curious to hear about you savages. If you take this test, it scores you in a percentile. So it scores you in relation to the general population. And so whenever you score too far outside, somewhere between 40 and 60th percentile, as you start going down or as you start going up in the percentiles, you're more likely to be categorized as having some sort of disorder, when really it's just like you're one extreme or the other. And so I think that's what we've really done. And I wanted to make that clear. Whenever I call this a difference in a personality difference, I don't know if it is related to personality. What we've decided to call a mood disorder and decided to name bipolar, if this is actually in fact a personality, which I believe it could be, I don't know if we should be calling it necessarily a disorder just yet. I understand, and here's this, like I said, this is what we need to consider real quick. Every single personality, every mode of being out there, every one of you fucking savages, take your strength and think about it for a moment. Your strength has within it simultaneously a weakness. There is a weakness associated with your strength. Every one of us, every one of our own modes of being is a double-edged sword. The very things that make us great are the same things that are also could potentially be our downfalls in certain situations, right? So for example, I'll just throw out a quick example. I'm extremely open, and I'm like 98 percentile for openness, right? But I get so consumed with my own ideas that I forget about the world around me, and so I neglect other real world things I should be thinking about. So every virtue is a vice taken to an extreme, but guess what? Every vice could also be a virtue if you look at it the right way. That's what we're trying to get to. Another thing I want to bring about, I'm going to end it with this, sort of. The entrepreneur and the artist type are the same in two ways, and they're generally, but not always, but generally the opposite in two ways. So, entrepreneurs and artists typically have high levels of openness and low levels of orderliness associated with conscientiousness. The entrepreneur generally is more extroverted, assertive, and assertive and enthusiastic and all over the place, and lower levels of neuroticism. So the entrepreneur takes big risks, right? That's what's associated with neuroticism. Low levels of neuroticism means you're taking big risks. That's the entrepreneur. While the artists, the writers, the poets, the painters, they generally, and this is actual study, they have the same high levels of openness, low levels of orderliness associated with conscientiousness, but they also have, generally, not always, but generally, they have lower levels of extroversion and higher levels of neuroticism. There's a study that was done about those who scored the highest in neuroticism. And then, this is just one study, I will say, but like fucking fiction writers and poets have the highest. Poets are like the number one profession that had the highest levels of neuroticism. 80% of, there was a study that said 80% of poets that were measured in this study. I wish I had the study on me, I don't. But it's fucking out there, so look it up, you guys. Just look it up, poets and neuroticism correlation, if you're fucking interested. Figure it out, right? 80% of them had a mood-related disorder. So, but entrepreneurs are notorious for taking huge risks. And so it seems like the brain, and they're both distinct personalities. The artist is a very distinct person. The entrepreneur is a very distinct person. And so they've carried, they're a personality type that has existed for thousands of years. I mean, that type of person has existed for very long spans of time. And so it wouldn't be a surprise that the brain has developed a personality structure around those kinds of people. And perhaps bipolar, and this is a very far out theory. This is very, very, very far out theory. Bipolar seems like it could potentially be a cross between an entrepreneur writer whose extroversion could potentially, and I know this is just one variation. There's so many variations of what we've decided to call bipolar. But the extroversion skyrockets up and neuroticism climbs down, then the neuroticism climbs back up and the enthusiasm drops back down. So it's doing like this. Neuroticism and extroversion are doing like this over spans of time, it seems. And then it's just one variation, obviously. The fucking brain is a lot more complicated than just that one example. There's people who have mood-related disorders that it's not that simple, right? Maybe their neuroticism is always high. Who knows? But anyways, that's what that shit looks like. I believe that it's a fucking It's a fucking bi-hybrid savage personality disorder. Difference. I had to catch myself. It's a fucking difference. Perhaps. We don't know to what extent that it's a disorder. We do not know to what extent it's a disorder. Those who got A's in school are 4 times as likely to develop bipolar later on. So, and they're generally, a lot of them tend to be more creative. And so I genuinely think that there's a personality temperament in there. I'm going to include in the link below. It's from Trivia.com. I don't get any endorsements. I don't get any money from them. I'm curious to see what you savages rank on this test. And I'm trying to build a community full of fucking savages. So take the damn test. Comment that shit down below. Subscribe to the Savage channel. Fucking next time, you guys.